Hello, my name is Princess Aiki, and I am currently a junior at the University of Houston. And for my final presentation for RALS 2360 Introduction to Buddhism, I have chosen to cover the Four Noble Truths. So first of all, we have to begin with what are the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths, they are basically a path that followers and believers take to become free from suffering. They are the basic teachings of Buddha, which he understood while he was under the Bodhi tree, and they encapsulate his entire journey and path. So now we will cover each of the Four Noble Truths one by one in what they truly mean. The first noble truth is known as dukkha, which also translates to the truth of suffering. So it is identifying our suffering and the cause behind it. That is the first of the Four Noble Truths. And it is believed that suffering comes in many forms and shapes, but the three first obvious signs of suffering that Buddha noticed were the first three things that he saw whenever he left the palace. And these three things include old age, sickness, and death. Now, according to Buddha, when life fails to meet our expectations or desires, that is when suffering comes into play. Not all of our desires or cravings are always satisfied during our lifetime, and that is when suffering occurs. And even if they are satisfied, even if we do get what we want, we only have them temporarily and then they're gone. And Buddha believes that that is the truth behind what causes suffering in one's life. With that being said, however, Buddha does explain that there is a path that we could take to end our suffering, and there are actions that we could take to lower our expectations from life. Now this brings us to our second noble truth, which is samudaya, which translates to the truth of the origin of suffering. Now, in this noble truth, Buddha claims to have found the cause of all suffering, and he explains that it is much more deeply rooted within us than our immediate worries. So just as stated before, Buddha explains to his followers that the ultimate cause of suffering, the root, begins within our desire. And another word for this is tanha. And tanha actually comes in three forms, which can be named as the three roots of evil, or the three fires, or the three poisons. Ultimately, the three roots of evil, they list the ultimate cause of suffering as well. And the first one includes greed and desire. The second one is ignorance. And the third one is hatred and destructive urges. Now these are, all of these three are actually represented by many things. So greed and desire is represented by art as a rooster. So in art they portray that as a rooster. Ignorance, they portray that as a pig. And destructive urges and hatreds, that is portrayed as a snake. In the second noble truth, Buddha went even further to explain the cause of suffering in the fire sermon, where he explained that it is the attachment to positive, negative, or neutral thoughts that can also cause suffering for us. So what that means is basically just holding on to the past or holding on to something that is going to be leading us to suffer ultimately. And if we learn to let go of those things, we will be more at peace. So now we come to our third noble truth, which is known as nirodha, which translates to the truth of cessation of suffering. And basically what this means is that it's the cure to our suffering. So in the third noble truth, Buddha teaches his followers that how they could end their suffering is by letting go of their desires and liberating themselves from attachment. So this attachment includes what we previously just talked about, but also attachments to materialistic things such as jewelry or anything that we use to make ourselves feel beautiful. Because Buddha teaches his followers that beauty comes from within, and that when we are happy with ourselves within, when we are just free of worries, that's when we become satisfied with our surroundings. That's when we are happy with everything in our life. and we shouldn't be relying on materialistic things for that happiness. So, since Buddha was the prince himself, he is practically an example of how that is possible and how people can accomplish that. He lived his entire life of lavish things in order to find peace and truly understand what happiness means, and left behind all the materialistic things that were there for him. So, talking about this inner happiness, nirvana comes into play, and nirvana is incorporated into the third noble truth in a way. So nirvana means to extinguish, just the word itself, and attaining nirvana ultimately means to reach enlightenment. Now, enlightenment, it can be achieved in individuals when they extinguish the three fires of greed, delusion, and hatred. But this is not an easy process, and this is a process that takes a while, and it can be achieved in many ways, which we will talk about. Now, when an individual does reach enlightenment, they begin to have compassion for all living things, not just humans, but they begin to respect every living thing around them. And that is something that is highly emphasized in Buddhism. But going back to nirvana, nirvana is actually a state of mind where you find profound joy and you don't have any negative thoughts or emotions anymore. So this is why Buddha encourages his followers to just find that joy and that state of mind within themselves and not in other things that, such as like, again, any materialistic things that give them those emotions. Going back to how enlightenment can be achieved, it could actually be achieved in many ways, and one of them is through meditation. And meditation is actually harder than what many would believe it to be because it requires ultimate concentration, and it takes years for individuals to be able to perfect that practice, and just to be able to sit there, breathe, inhale, exhale, without getting distracted or without having their mind wander off and letting go of any negative thoughts is not as easy, and it takes years to master it. And furthermore, whenever a person does die and they have reached enlightenment, they no longer are going through the cycle of rebirth, because in Buddhism, reaching enlightenment is the ultimate goal. And if they have achieved that within their lifetime, then they don't go through the cycle of rebirth anymore. Now, since those who have reached enlightenment are no longer going through the rebirth cycle, it is actually unclear of what happens to them. And this is a question that many wonder about. But Buddha actually encouraged his followers to not question this. He wanted them to just concentrate on leading enlightenment in order to end their suffering, and not to really question, oh, what would happen afterward, but to just focus on themselves and focus on the nirvana, the joyous state of mind, so that they could ultimately reach the ultimate path. So we're actually going to be reaching the final and the fourth noble truth, which is known as Magga, and it translates to the truth of the path to the cessation of suffering. And it is basically the final noble truth that is the prescription for suffering to end. And this prescription, I guess you could use that word, this prescription includes the Eightfold Path as well, which we will cover. Well, another name for the Eightfold Path is actually the Middle Way. And the Middle Way avoids both indulgence and severe asceticism, where asceticism actually translates to severe self-discipline. And Buddha says that both of these things are unnecessary for one's path towards enlightenment, and that they're not needed. Now, the Eightfold Path can actually be grouped into three paths, and the first path includes wisdom, second is ethical conduct, and third is meditation, as previously mentioned. Now, wisdom includes right understanding and intentions, which we will cover later on. Ethical conduct includes right speech, action, and livelihood, and meditation includes right effort, mindfulness, and concentration, which we'll all cover as we go through the Eightfold Path. The first step of the Eightfold Path includes samadhi, which is right understanding. Now, this first path describes a person having to accept Buddha's teaching. And right understanding basically means to have right views and right perspective and being able to see things the way they are without having any false illusions blinding you. So now what I mean by having to accept Buddha's teaching is that Buddha actually wanted his followers to follow his footsteps and follow his teachings and decide for themselves if they are effective or not, rather than following it blindly or having them being forced to follow something that they don't believe in. He wanted his followers to be able to understand the nature of the world and the ideas behind it, and to attain salvation by practicing right karma. And also he found it very important for his followers to understand what karma was. The word karma actually means action, and how Buddhism describe or view karma is that it is the result of our actions through our body, speech, and mind. So our thoughts are basically what lead to our actions. And what makes Buddhism view of karma unique from the Western view is that it is believed that like karma crafts our future, and what I mean by the future is I'm also talking about the cycle of rebirth, just as we have talked about it before. So our karma in this lifetime could actually follow us to our next lifetime. So speaking of our thoughts, this brings us to our second of the Eightfold Path, which is the Sama Sankappa, which means right intention. So this path explains our commitment to perform right actions. And Buddha states that our thoughts are what make us who we are, and what goes inside of our head determines what we do. And by having right thoughts, we are able to find our ultimate role in life and be able to be a better person and become a better person in the future. Now, the third path is Samavaka, which translates to right speech. So this means to speak truthfully and avoid gossip and abusive language. So Buddha encouraged his followers to always speak the truth and to avoid abusive language, because they are harsh and that they could cause distress or offend other people, and that is not what an individual's goal should be, because ultimately you are trying to better yourself as a person. So the fourth path is actually Samakammata, which translates to right action. So this means for people to live in harmony and to live a peaceful life. And it also means not to steal or kill. So Buddha gave guidelines for his followers to be able to achieve this path. And the guideline includes living in harmony with other beings. This doesn't just include humans, but every living thing around us, such as animals or nature, anything. Behaving peacefully, being kind to another, basically, not to steal or kill, of course, and to avoid overindulgence in sensual pleasure, abstain from sexual misconduct, and not to indulge in any fraud activities. So the fifth path is Sama Ajiva, which translates to right livelihood. So this means to live in such a way that you are able to avoid harm, such as exploiting people or killing, or even trading in toxins or weapons. And what this means is that Buddha said that a person must earn their living the right way. So, of course, everyone has their troubles in their life, but that doesn't mean that they should go out and do something bad in order to get something that they need or want. So he encouraged his followers to earn their living without performing quote unquote any illegal activities or anything that was morally wrong. He didn't want his followers to exploit one another or even like trade such as just stated, trade in toxins or weapons in order to gain something that they need for their living. Now the sixth path is Samavayama, which means right effort. So this explains our ability to free ourselves from evil thoughts or just evil in general and creating a positive state of mind and actually being able to maintain that, because that is the hard part. And Buddha says that we have to keep a positive and a right state of mind if we want to become better versions of ourselves. And once we have control of our thoughts and replace the negative ones with positive ones, we are able to move in the right direction. And in Buddhism, the right direction, or ultimately what everybody wants to achieve, is enlightenment. And once again, just as we previously talked about meditation, meditating is one way that followers are able to achieve this right state of mind and to gain control of their thoughts. Now, the seventh path is Samasati, which is right mindfulness. And this is actually very short, so it basically just means being aware of the body, sensations, feeling, and state of mind. By becoming more aware of ourselves, we gain more control of ourselves, and ultimately we make better decisions by being able to control our inner thoughts. Now, the final of the Eightfold Path is Samadhi, which means right concentration. And this basically means gaining mental focus. So actually, as stated before in the seventh path when we were talking about meditation, the seventh path and the eighth path, so right mindfulness along with right concentration, they're both the basis for, or the basic for meditation, and more specifically, Zen meditation. And Zen meditation is just a way to reach the right state of mind. And by meditating, once again, followers are able to focus their emotions and mental capabilities on what is important rather than like their desires. So it just pushes them away from the desire, which is ultimately the goal that we've been trying to achieve. And this allows followers to see things as the way they are and without any ignorance. And without meditation, an individual cannot move to a higher level of well-being. So it's basically impossible for you to go through these paths or for you to reach enlightenment without meditation, because you have to gain focus of your thoughts, and because ultimately our thoughts are what leads to our actions, and we're trying to be a better person and for ourselves. And when we are a better person, we become more satisfied with our life and with everything and how everything is basically. So that actually brings us to the end of the Eightfold Paths along with the Four Noble Truths. So that is the end of my presentation. And I just would like to say that I enjoyed taking this class very much. I did not have much prior knowledge regarding like Buddhism and what it actually was. So this class was very helpful to me, and I have always been interested in learning about new cultures and new traditions. So I would highly recommend this class to anyone who just wants to increase their knowledge. And I have learned many practices that I could incorporate into my daily life, such as meditation. And I believe that these will be very beneficial to me in the long run. So, to be able to gain more control of my thoughts and to be able to better myself that way is just, I feel like it's a win-win. But that is the end of my presentation. I will leave my contact information for anyone who has any questions regarding this topic or any other topics that were discussed in this class. And thank you so much.